right? And we know that part of Sfiras HaOmer is that it's actually considered a time of mourning. We're in Avelus, right? The first 33 days or less, however people calculate it at different times. But everyone knows the men don't take haircuts. We don't listen to music. These are part of the halachas of Sfiras HaOmer. And we're taught in Shulchan Aruch that the reason why we're in a state of mourning is because Rabbi Akiva, who was the greatest teacher of Torah in the time after the temple, he had many thousands of students, over 20,000, 24,000 students. And during this period, from the time Sfiras HaOmer began, again, there's different opinions exactly how to calculate it, but during this period was basically a terrible plague broke out, and all of his Talmidim, all of his students passed away. Because of this great tragedy, a tragedy that had national consequences, that threatened the very existence of the Jewish people, right? Because who would carry on the tradition of Torah learning and all of the numerous laws and rules that we have? Those were Rabbi Akiva's students. They would be the ones that continue the tradition. So it threatened the existence of the Jewish people. So in deference to this national tragedy, we observe the laws of mourning during these few weeks. So that's how Rabbi Akiva relates to this time period of Sfiras HaOmer. And ultimately, part of Sfiras HaOmer, we come to Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, right? We count day 33. And that corresponds to the Yartzeit, the anniversary of the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was one of Rabbi Akiva's greatest students. And that's when, at least according to some, that's when the mourning period ends. People can take a haircut again, start listening to music again. People can get married once again. So I wanted to take a little bit of time maybe to just discuss a few, maybe perhaps a few classes devoted to Rabbi Akiva, since Rabbi Akiva is pretty much the basis of all of halacha and all of the oral Torah. As such, he's one of the major figures. In fact, he's quoted, he's the Tana, meaning from the Mishnaic period, he is the Tana that is quoted the most in the entire Talmud. So out of any other Tana, he is the most quoted in the entire Talmud. So he's one of the most fundamental people for us to become acquainted with. And his life story is fascinating. So it could be many people know the story of how of his rise to greatness. We're going to go through that with some additions, maybe some explanations. And of course, always we're going to end off with some practical lessons for our own Judaism, our own relationship to Hashem. Okay, so the first thing we know about Rabbi Akiva, interestingly enough, is that his father's name was Yosef, right? Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. And he was actually the descendant of converts. In fact, Rabbi Akiva's great-grandfather was Sisera, the emperor from Tanakh. He was an enemy of the Jewish people, right? Sisera was one of the big enemies of the Jewish people. So, in fact, his descendants, Sisera's descendants, became converts to Judaism, and it resulted in Rabbi Akiva. So there's a difference of opinions, but some say that Rabbi Akiva was born around 50 years before the destruction of the temple. So he sort of saw this great transition from the time of the temple until its destruction by the Romans to afterwards. And we're told that he was completely uneducated. He had no Torah knowledge. He had no knowledge of halacha. He didn't know how to say brachos, barely maybe. Didn't know how to read Hebrew. He couldn't study Torah. Didn't know Aleph base. He was what they call an Am Haaretz, a person who doesn't know any Jewish law. In fact, we're told more than this. He actually had a very negative view of the Torah scholars. In fact, he said, I want to be, if I were like a donkey, I would bite a Torah scholar. I would bite him as hard as I could and say, why a donkey? Why not like a dog or something like that? He said, because donkeys break bones. That's what he said. Cool. So he wanted to be like a donkey who had teeth, who had strong enough jaw to break through the bones of Torah scholars. So this was sort of his upbringing, his attitude towards the learning elite as he saw it. Maybe it could be like a political, but maybe there's a little bit of a parallel to modern day some of what's going on in current events nowadays. So okay, so this was Rabbi Akiva's attitude. He was very uneducated, very anti the Torah scholars, but at the same time was a very pious individual. He may not have been knowledgeable, but he acted in an extremely upright way. In fact, the story is told about him in the Gemara. He was serving as a shepherd to a very wealthy person, and came time for his contract to end. He was going to move on to a new job, and he went to his boss to ask for payment. And the boss said, sorry, I don't have anything. Maybe you can give me from this, maybe you can give me from that. Went through all the different options, and this boss had nothing to pay him. He's a very wealthy person. Here, Rabbi Akiva has worked for a long time, maybe a whole season or more, and he's going home now empty-handed. He didn't receive any payment. So sooner or later, this person, I guess, got back on his feet or had some more available capital, and he came to Rabbi Akiva to pay him his wages. So Rabbi Akiva thanked him. And so this boss, he asked him, what did you think when I didn't have money? Like, did you think, like, you must have thought so badly of me? So Rabbi Akiva said, no, I thought maybe you had pledged some of your wealth to the base of Mikdash, maybe X, Y, Z, all these different things that were mitzvahs. So I judged you favorably, and I realized that you wouldn't want to purposefully hurt me and withhold my wages. So I thought all the options that might have happened, all the potential things that may have come up that would make it that all your capital was tied up and you couldn't pay me. So we see that Rabbi Akiva, even before he became a Torah scholar, had an incredible level of yashrus, of righteousness, of straightness, uprightness, ehrlichkeit in Yiddish. So sooner or later, again, he's a very simple shepherd. That's what he was, a simple shepherd, but a very upright person. So the way Hashem brought Rabbi Akiva to be Rabbi Akiva is maybe one of the most famous stories in all of rabbinic literature. And also, I think, has incredible lessons that we can learn in our own avodas Hashem. So, as Hashem's divine providence would have it, Rabbi Akiva took a job as a shepherd working for the richest man in all of Israel. His name was Kalba Savua. Kalba Savua means the satiated dog. That was the name of this person, because anyone who came to him, even if they were poor, if they came to him, they would come hungry like a dog, but they would leave satiated, completely satiated, because he had plenty of food and drink and anything a person might need to feel satisfied. So Rabbi Akiva took a job working for this very, very rich man, Kalba Savua. He owned a tremendous amount of land, tremendous amount of servants, tremendous amount of wealth. And the daughter of Rabbi Akiva, of course, was a very sought-after match, right? She was the daughter of the richest man in all of Israel. So, of course, she was being sought after. All the different, the richest and the most learned young men would come to try to win her hand in marriage. But she saw the shepherd that her father had just hired. Again, Rabbi Akiva was the shepherd. Wasn't exactly a noble profession per se, but he was honest, upright. And she saw his midas, the way he was upright, the way he would put in a lot of effort, even more effort than perhaps the job may have demanded. And she saw his upright qualities, saw his work ethic, and she saw the care that he gave towards his flock. And she said, wow, this is the type of person that I would want to marry. The only problem is that she wanted to marry a Torah scholar. And here was this very simple, unlearned person who didn't even know Aleph base. How could she marry a very simple, unlearned person? She had the ability to marry anyone she wanted. But she saw potential in him. She believed in him. So she made a very interesting proposition. She said, Akiva, I want to marry you, but I'll do it only on condition that you commit to becoming a Talmudic scholar. One condition, you become a Talmudic scholar. That's the condition. I know right now you don't know Aleph base, but I see you have an incredible work ethic. I see you have stellar character traits. And I know that if you put in the effort, you'll be able to become a legendary Torah scholar, a leader of the generation. So I will marry you on condition that you make something of yourself. You become a scholar, Talmud Chacham. Apparently, Rabbi Akiva himself was hesitant. Here's the most sought-after girl in the entire world, the daughter of the richest man in all of Israel, basically saying, here I am, let's get married. And you could go become a Torah scholar. But he was hesitant. Like I said, he had negative views of Torah scholars. He thought they were elitist. He thought they didn't respect simple people. Moreover, he was concerned about something very practical. He was already 40 years old. He wasn't a teenager. He already had a son. He'd already had a first marriage and had a son from that first marriage. And he said, I'm not really at that stage in my life anymore where I can learn a whole new science, a whole new craft. So because of this, he was hesitant to accept this woman's proposition. I don't know if I mentioned her name was Rachel. That was her name. My daughter's Rachel Leah, so I have a special place in my heart for that name. So Rachel offered herself to Rabbi Akiva, said, let's get married. I'll do it on condition you become a Torah scholar. And Rabbi Akiva himself was hesitant about this proposition. He said, I don't know if I can really do this. I'm not even sure I really like the idea of becoming a Torah scholar in the first place. So he hesitated. What he saw when he was out next would change the entire future of the Jewish people. A simple vision that he had. He saw on his way, he was walking with his flocks, and he saw some water dripping down, and he saw that over time, the water carved out a hole in the rocks. And he said, a kal v'chomer, he said a piece of logic. He said, if water, which is soft, can penetrate a rock, which is hard, the Torah, which is very holy and very soft, can surely penetrate my heart. Sorry, the Torah, which is hard, the Torah is a very strong thing, can surely penetrate my heart, which is soft. So he said, for sure, if I commit myself to becoming a Torah scholar, I put in the necessary work, I involve myself in it, and I put all the effort that I can into it, surely the consistency that I'll exhibit will affect me and change my heart. So once he saw this vision, he made this logic in his head. He said, okay, fine, I'm committing. And he went and he agreed to Rachel, the daughter of Kalba Savua. He agreed to her proposition, and they were to get married. The only problem, of course, was her father. Here's the richest man in the whole Jewish people, expecting to make a match for his daughter of sterling quality, sterling character. And who does she bring home? She brings home a balding 40-year-old man with a child who is nothing but a shepherd, doesn't know any Torah at all, has no business potential, has no societal connections at all, has no familial connections at all. The son of a convert. What is that?
A schlub in his eyes.
Right. And here's the one of the elite of the land of Israel, and his daughter comes home with this. And he was and make it clear, Kabbalah was a righteous man. He was one of the biggest supporters of the Jewish people throughout the whole time when the Jewish people were in Jerusalem and siege was being laid to Jerusalem. He was the one supporting the entire city. This was a very upright, righteous person. He wanted his daughter to marry someone with the same level as her, who could be also a Torah scholar. He said, well, who are you bringing home? Like, where did I go wrong here? So upon their marriage, Kalba Savua disowned them, and he would not give them even a cent. He made a vow, said, you will not benefit from me at all. That was his vow. And as such, the young couple lived in complete poverty. They had to move to another town. They lived basically in a shack. They had nothing, no beds, furniture, no anything. They slept on straw. Rabbi Akiva supported them as a wood chopper. That's what he did. He would chop wood. The way she would make an income for them, she had beautiful hair. She would cut off her hair and sell the hair to other women to make wigs out of. And that's how they supported themselves. And it was a very difficult existence. But Rabbi Akiva would start slowly learning Aleph base, slowly. And he would go to the kindergarten classrooms, go sit in with the kindergarten. It's an Aleph. This is a base. It's a Gimel. And he made very slow progress. It was not immediate that he became a scholar. But he was very hardworking. He was very persistent. And whatever he did learn, he reviewed many times and made sure that he made a complete acquisition on the information that he took in. So that was what Rabbi Akiva did. And for the first few years of their marriage, that was how they lived. He would work most of the day, and for an hour or two, he would go to the local kindergarten, first grade, second grade, whatever it was, and try to learn some Aleph base and get the basics of how to read. An incident occurred that started to change that. An incident occurred that would push him to try to accomplish more. During this whole time, he felt very guilty. He said, here's my wife. She basically grew up as royalty, and now she is sleeping on straw. She's living in this tiny little shack. I feel so guilty that she's going through this. He felt such a tremendous guilt that his wife gave up all of the luxuries, all of the comforts of life to marry him. So he felt, okay, I have to put in all the effort that I can to try to earn a living, go chop wood, whatever I can do, to at least make her existence as comfortable as possible. One day, they were in their home. All they had again was straw as their mattress. They had a lot of straw, maybe. And someone comes in, knocks on their door, and he says, I need help. My wife has just given birth. We have nothing. We don't even have straw to keep the baby warm. Can you at least give us some of your straw, please? Said, sure, okay, straw. That's basically all we have. But here, take some straw. Take some straw. The man took it. He was very grateful. At that moment, Rabbi Akiva realized himself. He said, at least we have straw. There's people worse off than me. But things aren't so bad. Things are okay. And at that point, his wife encouraged him. He said, okay, fine. Now that you feel that way, I'm sending you off far away to yeshiva. And he went, she sent him to the famous yeshiva of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, the two leading Torah scholars of that generation, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. The biggest Talmudic academy in the whole Israel. And there, of course, he became acquainted with all the scholars of the generation, and he started drinking thirstily of their words, and everything he learned, he acquired and reviewed it again and again and again until it became his own. It says that he would order it in such a way that it was easy for him to remember the information. He would take it in, order it in his own way that made it most understandable to him, and whatever he learned, he was able to retain. So like this, slowly but surely, he started amassing a tremendous amount of knowledge to the extent that one day he was able to make a comment, answer something in one of the classes that was being given that made the entire room turn their head. Whoa, who's that? Because they realized that he became a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. Sooner or later, his seat started moving further and further up, and people started asking him questions. And lo and behold, he started building his own academy, attracting his own students. And after 12 years, he had already amassed 12,000 students. 12 years after having left, amassed 12,000 students. And he said, okay, guys, 12 years. My wife said, come back in 12 years. I'm going back home. Welcome to follow me. So with his 12,000 man army, he started walking back home. And Chazal relate that at that same time, was a maybe not such a nice person in their neighborhood that Rachel lived in, who came to her and started sort of bad-mouthing her husband. That, oh, you're good for nothing husband. He doesn't even help you out. He doesn't help you with earning a living. He doesn't help with anything. Where is he? He's been away for all these years. And as Rabbi Akiva was about to get to the front door, he overhears this conversation going on. Here's this person bad-mouthing him. And his wife's response, she said, for up to me, he'd go and spend 12 more years. That's what she said. So, took his whole group, turned back around, went back to the study hall, sit for 12 more years, 12,000 more students. By now, he has 24,000 students. He says, okay, time's up, and goes back home. So now, by now, he's world famous. He's the most famous rabbi in the world, leader of generation. He hasn't seen his wife in 24 years. So he comes back, and she, of course, comes and tries to finally greet her husband and say hello. And of course, when you have 24,000 students, you have some bodyguards, and they stopped her. They kept her away. And he said something very, very famous. He said, stop. He said, what's mine and yours is hers. Anything I know, and therefore anything you know, is all because of her. And in that way, he showed his gratitude and his acknowledgement that it's only because of her sacrifice that he was able to become who he was, and who he was able to build his students into who they were. Now, at the same time, there was a certain Kalba Savua who started feeling regrets about the way he acted with his daughter, the way he acted with his son-in-law. He said, I don't want to be estranged from my daughter, my family, my daughter. I don't want to be estranged from my daughter. Son-in-law doesn't really matter to me. What kind of husband she married anyway. Like, I feel terrible that they're living probably the way in poverty. So I hear there's a great rabbi who came to town. I'm going to go and see, maybe he can help me annul my vow. He didn't know who it was. He had no idea that that was his son-in-law. So he had absolutely no idea. So he comes to this great rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I made this vow about my daughter, my son-in-law, to disown them, to not allow them to benefit from any of my wealth. But now I regret it. I don't want to keep them out of their inheritance. I want to be able to benefit them. I regret my vow. So Rabbi Akiva says to him, if you knew that your son-in-law would become a great Torah scholar, would you have made your vow? He says, Rabbi, if I would have known that he would know one Mishnah, I would have made this vow. He said, okay, that's good, because I'm him. That's me. I'm your son-in-law. Surprise. And immediately he fell to his feet, begged for forgiveness, and promised him half of his wealth, a vast, vast, vast fortune, half of his wealth. So overnight, Rabbi Akiva became a multi-billionaire. I don't know how they counted money back then, but the equivalent of such.
He's already 64.
Good point. It might have even been later because they were a few years before he even went away. So he's well into his 60s, if not 70s. So that was how Rabbi Akiva rose to greatness, how things worked out between him and his father-in-law, and how his wife was finally proven right about the seemingly very risky move she took in marrying this total, I don't know what to call him, but a very, very simple person without any Talmudic knowledge at all, without any. Usually the term is an Amma Aretz. An Amma Aretz is one who doesn't know any halacha, doesn't know how to daven, doesn't know how to do all these things. So a complete Amma Aretz. And yet, this complete Amma Aretz, through the support of his wife, the encouragement of her belief in him, was able to become the greatest scholar of all time. The single greatest scholar of the Talmud was Rabbi Akiva. Maybe we'll learn it. There's a whole incredible medrash that discusses Moshe Rabbeinu when he was about to receive the Torah, going up to Shemayim, being shown Rabbi Akiva, darshaning, explaining all the different marks in the Torah scroll. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet that ever lived, said, wow, you should give the Torah through him. This is who you should give it. Why are you giving it to me? Give it to him, Rabbi Akiva. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest, one of the greatest, possibly, the greatest person that ever lived. Said about Rabbi Akiva, you should give the Torah through him. So that's Rabbi Akiva.
He knew Rabbi Akiva?
Moshe Rabbeinu was, when he went up to heaven to receive the Torah, he saw Hashem creating crowns on the Torah. Kaviyachol, obviously, these are tremendous, contain tremendous spiritual secrets. I don't understand all these things, but he saw Hashem making crowns on the Torah scroll, on the letters, and he said, "Why are you spending extra time, Kaviyachol, doing this?" Because there's going to arise someone. His name is going to be Rabbi Akiva, and he's going to be able to pull out mountains of halacha, learn things from the littlest tag, crown, on a letter in the Sefer Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want to see him. So he had this whole vision where he went and he saw Rabbi Akiva teaching his students. For another time, maybe we'll talk about this on the next one or two. So let's just follow. I think Mincha's in about 10 minutes, so let's try to end within. Yeah, so I'm gonna take 2 more minutes. Now let's try to take a couple of lessons that we can get from this. Very, very simple. So the first thing is that we can never underestimate anyone's potential, right? You see someone, he seems like a very simple person, but that person can go through a 180 shift so quickly, it could be an entirely new person before you'd even realize. So you can never underestimate someone's potential. A second lesson, when it comes to relationships or marriage, parenthood, whatever it is, friends, the person needs to believe in their spouse, their child, whoever it is. That belief that a person has in their child or their spouse or their friend can be the very thing that brings out their potential. When you believe in someone, you see their potential, that could itself be what brings it out. And that's what we see. Rachel believed in Rabbi Akiva. She was able to see something no one else saw because she looked in a deeper way at him. And that belief brought out the greatest potential imaginable. Another lesson, no matter where a person is in life, no matter what they've gone through, no matter how old they are, no matter what chances, opportunities they may have missed before, it's never too late. He was already 40 years old. He never stepped foot in yeshiva. He didn't know Aleph base. And he believed in himself, and he went from 0 to 60. So it's never too late, no matter where a person's holding in life, it's never too late. Take on a little learning, set goals for themselves. It's never too late for a person to grow in their Yiddishkeit. And lastly, Rabbi Akiva started out hating Talmudic scholars, and he ended off becoming one himself. So we have to have a proper appreciation. We have very special rabbis in our community, right? So to give them the proper respect, honor, and to realize what it means for a person to be a Talmid Chacham, for a person to be knowledgeable in halacha, that you have Rachel over here who is willing to give up her entire comfort, every bit of decency that she had in her life, she's willing to give it up just for the hope that maybe her husband would become a Talmid Chacham. So when you meet a Talmid Chacham, it's a very, very important thing. When you hear the news, sometimes we hear, the Gedolim, the leaders of the generation, saying certain things. Maybe we don't always understand it. But through, whoa, this is a Talmid Chacham. This is someone who is in a completely different category. Someone who's very, not, they would, God forbid, look down on anyone. No, they're very humble. But they're a special, special creation. But so those are some lessons we get. My plan is to hopefully do a couple more shiurim on Rabbi Akiva. There's a lot to talk about. His life was tremendously packed with action. So that's the plan for the next couple of weeks until Lag BaOmer, maybe until Shavuos. We'll have to keep negotiating the time for Mincha, so we'll see. But let's end it here so everyone can get to Mincha with a calm mind.
You do this right before Mincha.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm happy. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always hard to figure out. Yeah, depends on the time of year.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.